Holy God, may your word be spoken, may your word be heard. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Do you have any particular memories of Memorial Day? Any special associations with Memorial Day? Going to the beach? Going to the beach? So kind of the typical activities of Memorial Day. Yeah. Do you remember any events on a Memorial Day or a Memorial Day weekend that stay with you? Yeah? What was that? Parades that you've experienced on Memorial Day. Things like that. So, what was that? Cookouts, sure. Memorial Day has all of these wonderful things that are around it. And some of those are experiences that we all share. We know what it's like to go to a cookout. We know what it's like to be at the beach. We know what it's like to go to a parade. And then sometimes we have particular experiences. And it seems in this room today, at least, I'm the only one. And that's okay, because I'm preaching off of it. Something specific happens that coincides with that date of the calendar. And so they're associated in your mind. They're linked. And for me, 30 years ago, Memorial Day weekend, I graduated from college. My particular graduation from college with my friends, my family came up. It was a really big deal. And it was a big deal personally on a couple of levels. You know, for me as a child of divorce, one of the heartbreaks of growing up with two different households is I rarely saw my parents together. And the times that I saw them together were graduations. So for them to have both come to Middlebury for my graduation, Middlebury College, where I graduated from, really big deal. Big place in my heart, right? A lot of connection and reweaving of torn relationships in that moment. It was also a big deal because in the immediate family around my mom, I was the first one to go to college for 4 years. Chip had his degree before I got mine, one of my older brothers. But to actually have the go away 4 years and graduate experience, I was the first one to do that. And it was a struggle financially to keep up with the demands of unfathomable to think about what now college costs and what it will cost when my boys are there. But back then, we struggled with what it was, and it was not a sure thing that I was going to be able to pay my bill and graduate. I worked the next year in part to pay off those who helped me get through and graduate on time with my friends. So just a lot going on in that. And so that weekend is especially important to me. But then there are other things that are about that weekend that I particularly remember. And they're tied to an object. I was doing some spring cleaning. I was already thinking about this, which is curious. But I was doing some spring cleaning in the basement yesterday. And I came upon this book. Do you know this guy? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know this guy. He's kind of a big deal. Retired now, I think still active, but retired from his regular appearance. This is Bill Moyers, and this is his book, World of Ideas, which was a show Bill did, and this is transcripts from various interviews that he did with smart, famous people. And more smart, well, never mind. You can be smart and famous, that's possible, right? That is possible. Maybe you should be famous for being smart. Maybe that would be a good thing if that became the norm in our culture. It's a free observation. So Bill Moyers was a friend of Middlebury's college president at the time, and he was our commencement speaker. And so he was doing a book signing for this book because it was relatively new. And my mom, being my mom, whose 87th birthday was yesterday, and for those of you who've been holding her in prayer, she's out of the COVID isolation unit and back to her normal, not so great self, to be honest, but alive and well, and happy birthday, Mom. So she gets in line with other parents that weekend at the bookstore to purchase a copy of this book. And her turn comes up. She comes up to the desk, and I'm imagining this because I wasn't there. I didn't know this was happening. And she gets to Bill Moyers, and she says, "You made a really big mistake. Do you know that?" My mother says to Bill Moyers, first thing in line, to get him to sign a book, which he did, just so you know where the story is going. Right? He did sign it. Right? This is not a confrontation where the police are called and he's taken away. No. She says, "You made a big mistake. Do you know that?" And Bill Moyers, being a relatively mature, balanced individual, said, "Oh, and what was that?" And she said, my son would have given his right arm to work for you, but you blew it. Oh, well, tell me more about that. So I had tried to apply for an internship to work in Bill Moore's production company. And I forget, it was some snafu with the date or the address or whatever. They never got it. And so they didn't consider me as an intern that year. So my mom sells me, right, as a mom, only a mom can sell you to someone in their, 1 minute elevator pitch about how magical their other child is. And Bill says, well, here's the phone number of my personal administrator. Have him call me. Because I was going back to New York, where Bill was. Have him call me, and we'll talk. I don't have to cover the number, because he's not, she's not, they don't have that relationship, and Bill's not in public business. I don't want to share information that shouldn't go out, like, banking, routing numbers, and all that kind of stuff. So, sure enough, when the time comes, and that summer rolls around, I give them a call, and I get to work for Bill Moore's, for an internship. And then a couple of years later, I went back for a little bit, and then I had another internship. And my experience with television and visual media was kind of grounded in that experience, which bears fruit today. So this book is a reminder of that day. And on this day when we hear Jesus just kind of pouring out his heart, praying to the Father on behalf of the disciples, it's a reminder for me of how much a parent's love can do and how much it means. And that's the love that God and that Jesus has for us. The love that my mom had to go up to this famous person that she doesn't know and say, straighten up, you've missed something from my child. That's what God's doing for us, right? And that's uplifting. That's hopeful. God's love for us is like a mom's love for their son to advocate for them. So this book is a sign of that. It's kind of wonderful to pop up in my spring cleaning. But I had been thinking about my graduation that particular Memorial Day weekend recently for another reason, and that was because of the commencement address that Bill gave. Particularly a story that he told from the history of our college, of Middlebury. And Middlebury at that time was 200 years old. What would that make it? 220. It was founded in 1800. It's nice when your anniversary is right around one of those big round numbers. We like round numbers. Makes it easy to do the math, right? So Middlebury, 220 years. And Bill recounted a story in the history of the college. There's a written history of it from 1816. From 1816, when something happened that I had never heard of before Bill mentioned it. And I don't know that I've heard of it. It's popped up every once in a while, but how could this not be known? I find myself thinking about. If you were to Google 1816, the year with no summer, you would learn a lot. And you'd probably be taken to a Wikipedia page, which is an okay place to go. I've said this before, I think Wikipedia overall is a good thing. There was, in what we now know as Indonesia, a massive volcanic eruption. Absolutely massive. And it sent a dust cloud over the entire Earth. And because the northern hemisphere was heading into summer, it was a catastrophe. Because spring never came. Plants never grew. Crops were never harvested. And as people began to realize what was happening, particularly in northern New England, where Middlebury is, it's kind of the middle of Vermont, they realized we have to leave. We have to go where there's food. There was still, in the middle of July, frost at night. Frost in July. It was the end of an ice age that geologists have studied. That was kind of the concluding event that brought this time of lower temperatures to an incredibly dramatic conclusion. And that summer, people got through it. They got through it. They survived. The college survived. The leaders kind of rallied and organized and got food to where it needed to be and made sure that people got the educations completed that they need to. The college survived. It's a story of perseverance and of courage that Bill was relating to us, encouraging us to step into life with resilience and courage. Could we use that now? Yeah, we could. We totally could. Which is a reminder that horrific, disastrous things happen and people carry on. They band together and they can survive, and in time, thrive, which was also part of Bill's point. Here it was early in the college's time, just like we were entering early into our life, this awful thing happened around the world, but people rallied and the college thrived. We, in times of challenge, can rally and thrive when we're on the other side of it. I also have contextualized in my own mind, what we're going through is awful, and the people who have suffered death or catastrophic illness, it's unspeakable how awful this is. But imagine if there was no food for a whole season. Worse things have happened. It's always helpful to remember things are bad, yes, and to embrace the reality of that, but remember there are also worse things that have happened. So if they got through that, we can get through this. You don't want to compare your disasters, but it's a healthy thing to say other people have gotten through challenging times, even more challenging than this, so I can get through this time. Because that's health and resilience. And again, check out that Wikipedia page, but not now. Not now. There's a third piece about that Memorial Day weekend that I particularly remember. And these things are a little eclectic, but I think they come together, at least for the moment that we're in. And that was Memorial Day itself. Memorial Day itself. Which, graduation's over, right? People are clearing out. Some people left Sunday. I wound up staying to Memorial Day itself, to Monday morning. And I went out to breakfast with one of my friends and his then girlfriend, who became wife. I would go back to Middlebury, I think it was 3 years later, for their wedding. We had breakfast at one of the local restaurants, and leading up to that event, I was so excited to graduate, and so excited to go out into life, and I had this very positive experience. And some of my friends, every so often, they'd get emotional, right? And I wasn't like, thank you that you're going to miss me. Thank you, right? Their tears and whatnot. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm graduating. I'm going on to life. This is amazing. So I'm at breakfast, and we're having a normal breakfast, and kind of sarcastic, and the way our humor was and is, very Gen X. And we didn't know that's what we were then, but that's what we were. And we come back to the campus, because I didn't drive, they drove me, and we separate, and it starts to hit me. It's my last goodbye to one of my dear friends. I don't know when I'll see them again, and I will never see them like this again. I start to choke up. So does my friend, because he's a guy, and her girlfriend's like, what's wrong with you, right? Just let it out. No, we can't do that. We turn and we part. I go to my room. I start to cry, because I have to pack up and clean up. I cry for the next 3 hours. Just bawling. I didn't know I needed to grieve. I didn't know all these wonderful, amazing things had come to an end. And you can't just be happy you're going on to the next thing. You gotta cry for what you're losing. I finished packing and cleaning up and taking things out to the trash, and my family, we were a two-car caravan at that point, and they were divided, boys and girls, and I rode with the boys for the first part of the trip to where they were staying, about 45 minutes south, and I'm still crying. And being in a car with, a teenager and, a grade school kid and your older brother, and you're still crying, not the best space. Kind of didn't enjoy that car ride. And they kind of didn't know what to do with me. It was awkward.
Get in the other car.
That's what I did. I rode with the women and the girls for the rest of the trip. I'd stopped crying by then, but it was still somehow more comfortable. Do with that what you will. Do with that observation and that experience what you will. But the point is we need to grieve. And friends, we've lost so much. We've lost so much. And our loss in many ways here is privileged, right? We've lost our community worship, right? We've lost being together. We've lost our coffee hour. There are people who've lost their lives, who've lost their health, who've lost their jobs, who've lost their support. We need to grieve that. We need to grieve that too. We need to have our own authentic grief for the things that we have lost. And we need to be open to the grief of others who've lost so much more. Because if we don't shed those tears, we're not going to be able to go through this to where God is leading us, which is what God, our loving parent, always does. Borrowing a line from a former colleague and preacher of mine, God meets us where we are, but God does not leave us there. God meets you where you are, but God does not leave you there. God invites us on a journey of life, which is joy and sadness, grieving and celebration, all in its time and in its turn. So we are on a journey. We're always on a journey, but it's different now. And I don't know where this journey is going to take us. I don't know. But I feel committed to partnering with you and with God and Christ to make sure that this takes us to a place of love and justice and compassion. Are you ready for that journey? Are you ready for that journey? Are you ready for that journey? We're on it whether we are or not.
Which car are you getting in?
It depends on what I need to do, doesn't it? Which car should we get in? If we're grieving, it'd be nice if both cars worked, wouldn't it? That's what would be nice, if both cars worked. I think anyway, we're on the journey together.